Okay, as a KMP, you need to certify on behalf of all. So therefore, the thought is, what underlying processes would you want to really evolve in your organization, which gives you enough evidence for your conclusion. The related party section on non-compliance. What does it say? Imprisonment up to 1 year, a fine not less than 25,000, may be extended up to 5 lakh or with both, again exposed to class action suits. So therefore, what I am trying to summarize here is that the life of a KMP no longer remains risk-free. And therefore, unfortunately, if you look at an organization structure, and if you look at the empowerment that has been entrusted on various KMPs, and the expectation that the Act has from an KMP, you may find certain mismatches and certain areas of friction or confrontation. On related party transactions, what has changed? The board report, so there are 3 sections which essentially focus on related party transactions, section 188, 186 and 184. So under 188, what it says is that every contract or an arrangement that has been entered under this related party transaction has to be referred to the board report to the shareholders along with the justification for entering into such contract or agreement. The question is not in terms of reporting. The debate is around justification. Is it only financial justification? Is it legal, contractual justification also? Act is silent on it. People are thinking, and I am not sure, if there are further clarifications that will come in on this. But the challenge is that, especially to the audience I'm talking to today, is how do you really summarize the justification as part of the board minutes and the board resolution part. The other part is that the registers under section 189, which says that every company shall keep 1 or more registers giving separately the particulars of all contracts or arrangements to section 188 applies. And the other applies to disclosures under 184(2), which is disclosure of interest of director, which I'm sure that you all are aware of. So here the moot point is the things to consider, to my mind, from a related party transaction for the company secretaries and the KMPs would be, what would constitute as sufficient acceptable justification as part of the board's reports. That's the first part. And how do you structure and write the justification is I think going to really take a lot of your time and a lot of your thought. What level of detail should the board's report reference from related parties have? So if you really look at it, any act can either be rule based or prescriptive. In this act, there are many areas which is prescriptive, and hence as we move in this journey, things would evolve around us, and we need to keep on observing what's happening around us, what leading organizations are doing, what's the acceptability thresholds of your own board, of your own independent directors, of your own other stakeholders in your organization. What level of detail should be provided in the financial statements to comply with under section 186? Which I said, is it only financial, is it legal, is it contractual, justification or rational, is it required or not required? Again, the Act is silent on that. How will one ensure that all existing transactions have been identified and reported? I think to my mind, this is the biggest risk of all. And I would summarize in my last slide, what as an KMP we can do best to protect our own interests under this Act. And the fifth is, does the current related party policy and procedures align to meet the requirements of evaluating and reporting all related party transactions? So in your own governance framework in your organizations, have you gone back and looked into that whether the overarching governance framework is helping you, aiding you to do and discharge your responsibilities? Internal financial controls. As of August 27th, we were expecting a further notification from the MCA the challenge is that the IFC part is a copy paste from the UK Act, word by word. Now, if you look back at organizations in UK and ask them what do they understand by internal financial controls, in their definition, internal financial controls include financial and operational. If you look at Sarbanes-Oxley and the US, internal financial controls essentially boils down to only internal controls over financial reporting. So only my reporting controls, not everything. Now you're supposed to have some mechanism through which your independent directors and board get comfortable that as an organization you have the right controls in place such that the safeguarding of your assets, the prevention and detection of frauds and errors are essentially identified, and the policies and procedures that have been adopted by the company are orderly and efficient to conduct your business. That's what the Act is talking about. So how do you really do this? So two questions to consider here. Have you assessed what in addition to what you have in your own organizations, your directors would be requiring to get the additional comfort on IFC? Because what you need to comply is that all your internal financial controls are adequate and operating effectively. Now, adequacy is a big statement. If there are professionals in this room, they will know, we really shiver to write adequate. So therefore, there was a request made through the institute back to the MCA saying, help us identify what really you have in mind when you talk about internal financial controls. And there is this draft that we were expecting on August 27th, where we have a little bit of an insider's view because few of our partners have been working back with the MCA to help them design and formulate their thought process. And more or less, thankfully, the MCA is not looking at operating controls, they're looking at more around SOX, more around internal controls over financial reporting. So the question is next to you. In how many of your organizations have your internal controls over financial reporting been documented?